well, it's so nice to meet you. Okay, so I was looking over again what you do, and this is exciting because I've actually had a crazy amount of like CPAs, attorneys, like high-powered people turned uh some sort of woo-woo person, and I've had several recently on this psilocybin journey. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. I've been working on the pronunciation, but I haven't had a female in a while.
Oh.
So, yeah, I'm really excited because, listen, when you're into the woo woo and you're super, trying to expand your consciousness, there isn't a whole lot of difference between men and women in terms of what we're what we're trying to accomplish, but the way our brains work are different. You know what I mean? And so um I still get a lot of, how do I say this? Because I feel like this applies to all of us too. This is what I'll say. I
Okay.
think when men and women traditionally use the word mindset, we have different interpretations sometimes, or they vary a little bit. Does that make
Oh.
sense?
Yeah, I guess initially, like, what comes up for me hearing you say that is, in my perception, sometimes men are more likely to be like, "Man up, like, deal with it, just, like, suck," and women are maybe more likely to get in touch with, like, "Well, what's going on? How are you
Why
feeling?"
did that mindset occur in the first place? Right. And also, if I'm just being 1,000% honest, I can also tell because listen, I've had men on here who were very real, very raw. I mean, I wouldn't have had them on, But
Mhm.
I guess too, I think I can also tell the difference between people who have grounded that work and integrated the work in a very emotional capacity and not just in a spiritual one. Does that make sense?
Integration is my favorite word. It's my favorite thing.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
I'm serious, that word alone, when I saw that in our, like, booking notes, I was so excited about that because, it can be kind of a buzzword sometimes, and I know
100%.
I really I was very curious about the word for a long time too. Well, shit, if I'm being honest, I didn't know what the word embodied meant, and it took forever to understand that word on an intimate level. So, I mean, obviously, integration is a part of that. So, anyways, I just said so many fucking words, but I'm curious if it's okay with you if we can start because I don't think that you got into the work that you do without some personal, stuff.
Yeah.
Can we start maybe closer to the beginning? Like what was early years for you like? Um, I'll just say it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I don't think anyone's journaling at, 8 years old. I'm gonna be in psychedelics when I grow up, or like even knows what psychedelics are. Um, and it's interesting that you mentioned, you've spoken with a lot of attorneys, CPAs, et cetera, like really sort of hyper rational people. And the thing about attorneys is I know one attorney that I think is pretty happy. I don't really know a lot of happy attorneys, right? It's just not a profession that lends itself to
Yeah.
that emotion. But I also didn't grow up thinking I wanted to be an attorney. My dad died when I was little, and that was really like the event that shaped me,
Yeah.
uh, and that really impacted like who I am, how I show up, etc. And it led to a lot of like perfectionism and needing to control. And so like the way I asserted control was like by doing really well at school and feeling like, okay, I'm getting A's, I'm top of my class. And it helped me feel like I had some semblance of like not everything is beyond me, right? Like I had my dad and I had a very close relationship. He was like the parent that I felt unconditionally loved by. And so to
Yeah.
have that parent like taken away is very disorienting and can feel like what can I what am I able to control, right? What am I able to like steer in this life at a very young age? And so it's funny, I was going to be a doctor and then I did this med prep class in undergrad where you have to like go to the hospital and you see all this blood and I was like, "Oh my god, I cannot like this is not going to happen for me." And so I sat down and made
I
a
would have done
list.
the same.
I made a list and I was just like, this is what I'm good at. This is what I like. And, out of this is before Chat GPT. So I was just looking at it and I was like, I'll be a lawyer. And so I did. I went and I practiced for 3 years and I hated it.
Oh, really?
And this might sound a little naive, but when I thought about becoming a lawyer, one of the things that I wanted to do was be able to make a difference. That was a big reason why I wanted to become a doctor. But then you get into the practice of law and you realize, like, if two people are already at the point of entering the legal process, no, neither one of them is gonna leave 100% happy. Even if you win
Mhm.
millions of dollars, it's probably because someone died or, like, you lost a limb, right? Like, no,
Yeah.
the people aren't gonna be made whole. That's the intention of the legal process, is to make someone whole, but it's just not gonna happen if it gets to that point. And so
Mhm.
I was really discouraged, um, and I really felt like, "What am I doing? I'm not making the impact I wanna make." And so it wasn't like attorney psychedelics. It was really
Yeah.
attorney, a lot of my own personal development work,
Mhm.
getting certified to be a coach, doing executive coaching, and then finding psychedelics for myself and for my anxiety, and then realizing how powerful they are, and then pursuing facilitation and now combining coaching and facilitation for the work that I do.
Awesome. Okay. So how old were you when your dad died?
I was 6.
Okay. Okay. And this is a kind of a random question for you, but it's not for me or the audience because I just put out a solo episode about something like this today. But I'm curious because my dad died when I was 15 and I had a really bizarre experience. Like I was being raised by my grandma and she hated my dad, so that was a whole thing. But then I just see so much of when we are performing what other people are thinking of our grief process. So I'm wondering, did you have any like for lack of a better phrase right now, invisibility wounding around your grief too because you were meeting all the markers like that a child should meet. Like did you ever feel like nobody sees me or sees that this was actually a really painful, and it's okay if you didn't. I'm just curious.
I What comes up for me hearing the question is, like, my mom didn't ever put me in, like, with a counselor or, like, a grief anything therapist, and so I think she thought she was I know she thought she was doing the right thing. I am of the belief that people are doing the best they can with what they have. Like, that's just
Sure.
that's a POV that I carry with me through my life that makes my life a lot easier to deal with. But that was, like, I kind of felt unseen by her, I suppose. I'm like, "What did she think?" Like,
Yeah,
did
yeah,
she
yeah. That's
think
exactly what I'm hitting on here. Yeah, is like it's kinda like I used to say this about my grandma, unrelated to grief, but, like, she had such strict, weird rules about so many things, but grades, she's like, "As long as you did your best." I'm over here fucking failing in elementary school, a class here and there, and she's like, "Well, did you try your hardest?" I'm like, "Mhm." Do you see I'm at least average intelligence. So where is the disconnect? I didn't fucking try at all because I'm living in trauma brain over here. So that's one very key like part that I look back on like how did you not see that I was struggling? So yeah, that's why I was asking because well and so I just lost a child like last month
Oh,
and I am putting my daughter in a grief group that starts this week, but she's 11, he was 18. And I've been like, I mean, from the outside, all the things that I would say to look for in how somebody's doing they look fine, but it's because she talks about him openly with a smile on her face, you know, like, she integrates him into conversation easily. She's doing fine at school. She's developing her friendships, but having, like, really been internalized the last couple of days about wondering why I'm triggered about certain things, I'm like, "Oh, I'm glad I'm putting doing this grief group for her," because, I mean, that's just gonna be the beginning. I don't know where we'll go from there, but yeah, I think so often we can look back and be like, "I kinda wish someone had seen that, like, I might have needed a little help."
I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it is what it is, you know?
Loss is
Um,
so, like, I think it's great that your daughter is able to still make friends, because that's kind of what, else I was thinking when you asked the question, was I really struggled with friendships because
really?
Yeah, I was 6 and my dad had died, and I feel like other little kids at that age, maybe they lost a pet or, like, a grandparent, but like, I think death is still a very amorphous concept for a lot of them. It still was for me thinking like, "Okay, so does this mean, like, no contact, like, ever?" You know?
Right. How
And then
long are they gone? Because that
yeah,
seems
like,
like a
or
long time.
so is it, like, a couple weeks?
Right.
And then I just really I was going through a lot and, like, little kids can't relate, now in adult friendships, like, one of my best friends lost her brother, a few years ago, and, I do get it, right? And adults, we can get it more. We can like, we've all probably had our hearts broken or lost a parent or, um, maybe had some sort of unfortunately, I know a lot of, especially women, have had, like, traumatic sexual incidents, right? But, like, so we have some sort of shared commonality and, like, understanding, but little kids don't, and then I would just felt like an outsider always.
Yes, yes. Did that make you try even harder to achieve? Was that like, "Oh, okay, I'll just do this, and this is how I'll receive my validation and, worthiness?"
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I didn't have friends. I didn't have friends, I had books. I read a lot as a child,
Yeah.
a ton, and, that probably helped my SAT scores, but it didn't really help, like, with friendships, and so I struggled. I feel like who I was before my dad died is who I am, like, joyful and fun and happy, and then, like, my dad died, and I think about this just, like, layer of, like, dust and, like, grime that got put over me, and it really dampened, like, my inherent essence, and so it was
Yeah.
hard to make friends. I felt really odd and, like, unsociable, and it was really difficult for me to connect, and then my life has been spent, like, dusting myself off essentially to get
Yes,
back to that place of joy, and so now I have a
yes.
really easy time making friends, like, I have a lot of good friends, but that was, like, it was a process.
No, I so resonate with that, and I feel like for me, what I've discovered because when my dad died, I started pushing everyone away. That was not the narrative in my mind. It was that I was being abandoned,
Yeah.
and people weren't showing up for me, and then I started, like, looking back and going, "I think that they certainly tried to be," and then it would piss me off because that would require vulnerability from me that I wasn't willing to engage in, and so I pushed everyone away, but it did not feel that way to me, that my story
Yeah.
was very real in my mind that they just didn't know how to show up for me. I will say now, I'm fine in my friendships, but there's a worry. Like, I think everyone in my life is okay with who I am right now and forever, but, like, I do wanna talk about my son. You know what I mean? And I know that I fear. I can't say no, but I fear anytime I bring him up because I'm like, "Oh, well, I mean, that doesn't wanna they don't wanna talk about only that," or, not that I wouldn't wanna talk about them too, but I'm saying in terms of me, I start to worry like, "Oh, am I talking about it too much?" Or you know what I'm saying? And so I think that can I'm working really hard to just be and say whatever the hell I want and do whatever I want, and not lean into that fear because I know that that's what perpetuates the cycle of pushing people away. So I don't wanna I've had so much loss in my life actually, and this is the first loss I've ever even attempted to do grief in a healthy way. But I can certainly see how so many things when you're grieving really prohibit any sort of evolution in your relationships. But man, at 6, that is tough because your foundation was already like in terms of who you are, it wasn't even there, like you're only what you are in relation to your parents at that age. So what are you when your dad leaves at 6? What are you?
Yeah, I really resonate with what you're saying about thinking or worrying perhaps that like this could be a not fun situation for your friends to be in, or maybe then they won't want to talk to you. I think one of the things that really like has shifted so much for me is reading like this book, The Four Agreements, of like not taking things personally and not making assumptions, and like really just the concept, like, even, like, the untethered soul of, like, not getting so caught up in our thoughts, period. Like, I'm very much, like, I feel and I move and I do, and I don't like, not that I never think, right? Like, I think all the time. Like, I've I do lots of thinking, but it's like, we really give our thoughts a lot of power when, like, we could have had 1,000,000,000 thoughts. This is the thought we're having, and, like, it's not true in any, like, quantitative
Yes.
sense.
Yes, I love that. I'm always telling people your brain's a liar.
Yeah.
And I try to lean into that as much as possible, that your brain is a liar and it only serves one function, to keep you alive. So, all the rest you got to figure out how to do in your body, not in your brain. Okay, so I wonder, did the personal development come because you had a little bit of a like crisis after you decided like I just put all this fucking work into becoming an attorney and I fucking hate this?
I actually had a big crisis my last year of law school where I thought this I was gonna marry this guy.
Oh,
Our
okay.
relationship just went to shit. And I was really struggling emotionally. Part of the reason our relationship went to shit was I felt like he kind of had this Jekyll and Hyde where at the beginning he was so nice and he got kind of angry. But a part of it too was like he was very avoidant and I was very anxiously attached and that didn't really
Oh,
lend
yeah.
itself anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I went to therapy and then I learned about like codependency. I realized I was codependent. I had the space to talk about my dad and like death and what impact that had for the first time. I also got prescribed like Prozac at that time. And so I had started doing that sort of work and I found that I just like didn't like it. I found it all really re-traumatizing. Like initially talking
Yeah.
to my dad was really cathartic. And then like every single week where Deborah's just like, so your dad died and then your mom fucked you up. And I'm like, yeah, but do you want a cookie? Cause I came in here like able to tell you that. Like, what are we doing? It felt like there was no,
Yeah.
it was just picking.
Yeah. Why are we
And
talking about the same shit and nothing's changing?
yeah, I'm talking about it with
Mhm.
you literally every week and nothing's changing. And then
Mhm.
I found like the Prozac did help because I needed to level out. Like I was just too emotionally like all over the place. But then in the leveling out, I became like two level where like nothing was super good, but nothing was super bad and nothing was super anything. And so I let go of both of those things. And I liked personal development because it was forward focused. It was like, okay, this happened, but like what are we gonna do about it?
Yeah.
And so I really fell into it. I got into personal development probably in my second year of practicing law. And then by my third year, or yeah, like right when I was leaving the law, that's when I started getting certified to coach others.
Okay, okay. So you were an executive coach. Does
Yeah.
that mean you were basically like, let's figure out, like, helping people with their intrinsic motivation, stuff like that? Is that what that means?
Yeah, so I like executive coaching because I felt like it was a really natural transition for like the population I was already working with. Like, so for instance, my very first executive coaching client was this big real estate developer, and we were looking at a lot of different things. Like, I was teaching him tools for better emotional regulation, like meditation and things like that. He was someone who struggled to connect with like he downloaded the Calm app, right? And he was like, I don't like any of these. Like, this is too like woo woo, too soft. And so I found like an approach that worked for him, and really thinking about like time and energy management because he was a dad of littles and wanted to be a good dad and a good partner. And then also the more executive level of like how are we handling these like relationships, right? Like interpersonal skills. I think a lot of executives make good decisions but maybe don't have the best
Yes,
approach to
baby.
building
Yeah.
skill or
Very
handling conflict.
straightforward and very like almost egocentric is the best way to describe it, just because they only see things from one view and it's usually not from like an emotional one.
And looking back, I was also doing a lot of I like leadership coaching a lot, like finding your unique leadership style and like your inherent style, but then also learning how to like the term that I use that I learned was like style flex into other quadrants. So you can show up as like the most effective leader for your team. Like who does this team member need you to be? Because ultimately, like it doesn't matter who you are if who you are is not helping the team. Like that's the whole point of being a
Yeah.
leader. So that was a lot of the work that I was doing. And I did really love it. Like um I love working with that type of client and I love those tools, but I felt like something was missing for me in my own like anxiety and depression. And once I found psychedelics and was able to do that, then it became like this is the missing puzzle piece for a lot of people.
Yeah. Okay. So what precipitated you trying it?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of it was like feeling discouraged because I felt like I had done such good work and like I was trying like this my side of the street was clean. That's kind of always my measurement of like is my side of the street clean? Yes, mine was. I was putting in the effort, but I still had this like level of anxiety and depression that I just couldn't like kick, almost like a cold that you can't get over. And it I really believe in a higher power, God or universe or whatever,
Some
resonates
benevolent force. Yeah.
some force that's guiding you towards something.
Yeah.
And so I was running a nonprofit in LA, and we worked with this guy who was an expat living in Colombia. We work with this big Colombian population. And so he was coming back to the States and he's like, we've only ever met on Zoom. Like, let's go to dinner. I want to meet you. I'm like, yeah, of course. So we go to dinner and he's like, hey, I'm investing in a company and I would love to get your opinion. Will you come check it out with me? And it's so funny. I don't ask like what it is. I'm just like, yeah, sure, let's go.
Okay.
And he takes me out to this like, big like production facility and he's like, this is a microdosing company. I wanna know what you think. Here are these microdosing capsules. And on the back of the bottle, it says, like, "Take 1 capsule once a day for 3 days, and then don't for 2 days, and, like, repeat for 30 days," or whatever, right? And he's like, "Let me know." "What do you mean, let me know?" Like, I was so
Yeah, let me just
confused.
ingest some fucking psychedelics without anyone to help.
So then I got really curious because I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like I can Google this, right? Like there's got to be something. And so I just started researching. I read Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind, which is a great book for anyone who he's a scientific writer, but he writes in a really approachable way. I also have in undergrad I worked in a research lab, and so I have like an understanding of research. I read a lot of research papers. I could understand like what's statistically significant. And then I started pursuing like different courses and trainings online about facilitation just to like learn more about what was going on, right? And so from there, I took myself on a journey of a microdosing protocol for 30 days, and my anxiety and depression were gone. And I was like, what is
Um,
this? And so I started, people were commenting because I was sharing it online, right? And that became my work. It's been my work ever since.
wow. So did you have any, like, trippy experiences with it or just the mood elevation?
Well, okay, so that's a great question. Microdosing is truly subperceptual, meaning you're not like seeing anything, you're not impaired. You can drive, you can pick your kids up from school, you can cook dinner, you can have a conversation, you can work. But after I found so much relief through microdosing, I did eventually pursue both larger journeys for myself, and then it's
Yeah.
called trip sitting, essentially, right? Like learning how to hold someone else and guide them through that experience. So definitely have had like trippy experiences and since then, but my work really started off with microdosing, which is really below the level of perception.
Yes, yes. Well, yeah, I'm a huge proponent. I don't do it because I have schizophrenia in my family. Like my brother's schizophrenic and he did a lot of acid. So the thing is I'm pretty sure I'd be fine, but it's like I don't want to take the chance, you know? But I wish I could. I really do. Just because I've heard so many good things about it. But okay. So what I want to know, because I just love to talk about this, is do you think I know the benefits were there even in the microdosing, you were just happier. But when you did the larger quantities, could you talk a little bit about some of the realizations that you were able to walk away with, like how your consciousness expanded because of it?
Yeah, for sure. And I will say about microdosing, yes, there's mood elevation, but also a big thing for me with microdosing was it quieted down like the internal thoughts and like the feedback, like we are not
Yes.
our thoughts, right? We were talking about earlier. So that was
Yes.
a big thing for me because my thoughts like were very overwhelming. And so
Mhm.
once they were quieted down, I realized like they could quiet down. Like I didn't know that was possible. And then I trained myself, I taught myself how to quiet them down regardless of whether or not I was microdosing. And that's really where the shift came in. So there's a lot of there's so many beautiful things that microdosing does,
Yeah,
but mood elevation is certainly one of them. I'll say for me, like shutting up that internal feedback loop was like the biggest one. But
I
in
get
terms of
that.
my larger journeys, like the two that really stick out to me, just initially hearing your question are on a common theme for me is that life has dealt all of us some not so great hands, right? Life has been cruel. Life has been some of us abusive. For some of us, it's been about loss and grief. For some of us, it's felt like, we're never good enough or we're not accepted. We all have stuff that really sucks in our life. And not every time, but a lot of the time when I have a larger journey, I come back to this feeling of like, yes, life has dealt me some hands that have not been good, that have not felt good. But that is not I haven't allowed life to make me harder, right? Like sometimes life deals people shitty hands and they become assholes. And they're like, well, I'm protected against life and life isn't fair and like everyone sucks. And I'm not saying that's even good or bad or right or wrong. I get it. I see the trajectory. I understand how we got here. But for me, everything that life has dealt me has made me softer. It's made me more loving. Like I don't think I am Jesus or like I'm perfect like Jesus, right? But that whole idea of like someone slaps you, turn the cheek and offer them the other. I feel like that is something I've really embodied. And I am like a rock in a river where the water pours over me and it just like smooths away my hard edges. So that's a big one. I become more
Wow.
loving as life goes on. I think the other one, and this was one that happened a few years ago where like I had a lot of self-loathing. I did not like who I was.
Yeah.
I also there were some aspects of me that needed to shift, right? Like I was a bitch when I was an attorney. I would lie about dumb shit. Like I was not a like there wasn't a lot of qualities that I look back at and think like, "Oh my god, like you were crushing it, babe," right? Like go make
Yeah.
that twice.
Yeah.
But a lot has shifted since then, and so I had this journey where, like, I just felt how much I loved myself. Not from a
Yeah.
place of, like, I'm egotistical and I think
Yeah.
I'm the shit and, I'm gonna tweet about it, but from a place of, like, I like who I am, I like how I treat people, I like how I show up, I like the impact that I have in the world, and as someone who dealt with a lot of self-loathing, that was a huge positive experience.
Okay, now I have to ask this question because
Yeah.
of what you just said. Um, so bitchiness was not any part of your true personality because what I've learned about myself is some of that bitchiness is just me. Like I'm still I'm not like I'm bitchy to my husband, but like there are times in advocacy especially that I can find myself especially like with my daughter, like if someone fucking fucks with my daughter, like, I'm like mama bear, like, just bitchy. But, yeah, sometimes I'm bitchy, like, that just seems to be and I don't mean that in a shitty way about myself, like, I'm not talking shit about myself, and I have become so much softer and sweeter and more loving and kind, but, like, I'm kinda bitchy. So, is that, like, not truly, like, part of you at all?
Well, I think what's gotten clear for me is, like, I am sassy, like, I have, like, a
Oh,
spice.
okay, I like that, yeah.
But, I don't like, everything's a spectrum, right? Like, you
Yeah,
could be
yeah.
really, like, meek, or you could be, like, a raging bitch, like, and somewhere on there, like, I wouldn't say
True.
I'm a raging bitch, but I was, like, definitely a bitch, and now I would say I'm over here where I'm just, like, a little sassy barbecue sauce, like
Yeah.
but I would still say, like, I exist on the spectrum, like, I bit like, that level of bitchiness was not who I authentically was, no.
True. Yeah,
That
yeah, and I didn't think so. Yeah, but, part of my noise was that it defined me. It was my
Mhm,
biggest source
mhm.
of shame, in fact, because I was a very reactive person, because I internalized everything over and over and over, and so I didn't I was I was ashamed at normal everyday stuff because I didn't talk about it, but also just how reactive I was. Because out in public, I would freeze or fawn in any sort of conflict, but then I'd come home and just take it out on everyone I loved. And my grandma was really ill-equipped to deal with that, and she just like piled on the shame and piled like you're just a bitch and your brother has such a better heart than you and whatever. And I'm like, that's because he's a Leo and I'm fucking Gemini, grandma. But, it was really shameful for me, and that noise is what grew the very, very loudest, was like, "You're just a mean person." And so, as I started, like, washing away so much of that grime, as you put it even, was like, "Man, you're not mean. You had some shit to figure out. Like, you just, you had to unravel quite a few things." But then I also realized, like, I got a lot of fire in me and I use it. Like, you know what I mean? I'm pretty fucking fiery. But but I've learned how to hold that in a way that I can feel proud of. Like, I don't love when I'm still reactive sometimes because I'm not perfect. It happens. But I also don't beat the shit out of myself for it either.
Well, I think that's the key, right? Like shaming yourself or guilting yourself or feeling judgment toward yourself isn't going to change anything. And I really enjoyed conversations with God. But one of the things that I love most about that book and was him saying like we life isn't one of like becoming who you are, it's like creating yourself. Like you can be whoever you want to be. And I think for a long time I viewed myself like as a liar cuz lying was a weird thing where like I would lie to be accepted
Yes.
because I felt, really abandoned even though like my dad
Mhm.
didn't like ditch me, he died, but that's abandonment nonetheless. Um
Absolutely.
And so I would lie about weird shit even sometimes, and
Yes,
so
me too, me too.
I thought of myself as a liar, but then I realized, like, I have lied, but, like, I am not a liar, and so now I actually consider
Yes.
myself I'm, like, hyper truthful, and that can sometimes be, like, disorienting for people, but I don't, like, couch or pretend. I am
Yeah.
who I am, and I say what I mean, and you can trust that if I say something, I mean it, and so I've really taken on that energy of, like, I can create myself to be whoever I wanna be.
Yeah, I love that, and did you ever get called out about your lying? Like, did that deepen your shame?
Oh, yeah, I mean, if you lie, you're gonna get caught in it. Like, I don't know anyone
Yeah.
who's ever gotten caught in a lie, and then it does suck because then you're like, "Fuck, and now I hurt this person, and I didn't really wanna hurt them," but, like, at a
Yes.
certain point I think that's also what's tough about personal development. Because when I first got into it, like, you're kind of like the boy who cried wolf. It's like, well, you've been a shitty person, so, like, this is so cool that now you're like, "I'm doing this thing," and it takes a while for people to catch up to your change, and because for a lot of
Yes.
people too, I know people who don't embody, who don't integrate, right? And so it is a very much like I'm thinking of one person in particular who's on like every personal development program in the books, but like it's very performative. 2 weeks later, he's back to his same like bullshit. So yeah, I get it. And it took people a while to catch up. But now I have like an earned respect because people
Yes.
see who I am and how I've changed.
Yeah, well, it took a while for my kids to really, like, trust any of this shit because 'cause I've only been on this particular journey for a couple years, but really about a year and a half. And before, like around 2017, I was starting to hear about nervous system dysregulation and a little bit about trauma. Like I understood I had trauma, like a lot of it. And so that was like a very freeing feeling because I was like, oh, I'm not just like a fundamental fuck up. I'm not fundamentally unlovable. I just got some shit I got to figure out. But I didn't embody I didn't integrate, I didn't understand how to. I didn't have the whole piece, like the whole puzzle put together. So I was missing a lot of information. So I was trying my damnedest to get it
Yeah.
figured out, but I guess what their perspective was is my actions and my words were very incongruent.
Yeah.
Fair, fair. Um and so when this shit started and I was like having spiritual awakenings and, epiphanies and whatever, they were very like, we'll see. That made sense to me. I mean, sometimes they can hurt my feelings, but I get it. I was a very emotionally unavailable mother. But, um, I think now too, some of my friends who I was probably, like, the harshest with back then, um, they're just now kinda catching up to, like, who I am now, because of losing my kid and them being very like, "Is it okay if I hug you at the funeral?" Like, shit like that, and because I was very like, "I just don't like to be touched," and I'm like, "Yes, you can hug me." But, like, that one made me laugh in particular because it's been about a year since I've started to be okay with hugs, but they don't know, like, this version of me because, we don't spend, like, a ton of time together. I have kids, they have kids, whatever, but just getting to hear me kinda talk about life loss from this perspective of a person who has really gone through some real transformation in the last couple years and which I'm so grateful for because it really prepared me with a lot of really good beneficial tools to deal with this loss. And so I remember one conversation in particular really just touched me because I was feeling very vulnerable to say it, but I was like, I feel really like soft and tender in this moment. Like I can feel all the love and support that I'm receiving from everyone around me. Like I'm just really grateful to me for having done this work so that I can receive it instead of what I would have done before, which is nobody cares about me. No one shows up for me. I know that I would have found a way to make that narrative true. I mean, that's what confirmation bias is, right? And so, I think that particular conversation will always be very meaningful for me because I felt very seen because her response too was like, "That's so beautiful. Like, I'm so happy that this is the place that you've arrived in your life and whatever." But yeah, I think it takes people a little bit to be like, I mean, you said some shit. I was a fucking liar though. I mean, like, I did the weirdest shit in school. Like, I would just like I've told this story a lot, but like, I once I'm gonna show my age really quick, but I once in 4th grade was New Kids on the Block were coming to town, and it wasn't a revival tour. It was like their first tour, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna New Kids." I wasn't, okay, and they're like, "Oh, can I go with you?" And I was like, "Yeah. Yeah, you can come. Just I'll pick you up." And then, of course, I didn't pick a single fucking person up, and what was I thinking? Like, I was gonna have there was going to be an after, and there was, and thankfully, it had rained that night because I was like, "God is such a good excuse." So the next day, they're like I was already known as a liar by this, like, y'all that's on you for believing me, but they were like, "Where were you?" And I was like, "Oh, my grandma wouldn't drive because it was raining, so sorry."
I've had some crazy lies like that for sure, especially when I was younger. Yeah, some big ones were like it was like the tax man was gonna come to collect, and I was not prepared to foot the bill. And then you do get caught, and it's just like it does suck. And then kids also don't. I mean, now, like as an adult, if I like an adult was really lying, I'd be like, "What's going on with this guy? Like something like under the hood, right, is happening."
Yeah, yeah.
And like kids are just like, "You suck, you lied," right? But I love the definition you gave was like of integration was just like your actions were matching your words. So like you didn't have trust, your kids didn't have
Yeah.
trust in you because like there wasn't that alignment or the congruence.
Yes.
Um, but I'm so happy you brought that thing up about your friends too, where, for however long we've known someone, we've been teaching them how to treat us and who we are. And if we suddenly have a shift and we're different, like they're, we have to give them grace because they're relearning who we are because we've relearned who we are.
Yes. That's been a big transition in all of my relationships since I started really healing and had a spiritual awakening. Um, because because the thing is, what I noticed was I became not passive aggressive anymore, or the person who would just like choose what I felt was space, but was probably the silent treatment over confrontation. And now I'll go for the confrontation every time because I would rather that we just talk about it. And in my mind, it's not conflict. It's a little bit of a hiccup. It's like a, hey, even sometimes, I mean, most of the time I would say I'm trying to like take accountability for something. Like, hey, this is who I am, and this wound was hit by this action of yours. It's not your fault that that's the wounding I have. So I'm not upset at you at all that your actions or words triggered this. But if I don't talk about it, I'm going to keep thinking about it and creating a scenario that is very untrue. So I just want to tell you about it. And even then, even me taking all the responsibility, sometimes it can be not received well. And so that's been a little bit of a shift in my relationships is that I am more confrontational. I'm going to put that in air quotes because I don't feel like that's what I'm doing. But in terms I mean, I guess sometimes I do because it's still very scary to be authentic, vulnerable in my communication because I was a weaponizer. I loved to not say anything to your face and then go craft a really perfectly worded text to be perfect in my so that I wasn't I'm not cussing at you, I'm not whatever. I'm being very perfectly reasonable and rational in my communication. And then when you are still turned off by everything I said because it was this word vomit of really a really sweet way of saying what a piece of shit you were. I mean, that's the truth. I don't know why they don't receive my communication well, but it was just all other ways to confirm, like, well, this is why you can't tell people when they hurt you. This right here. But like now, I would just much rather in the moment be like, oh, I don't like that. And even fuck up a little bit and then fuck up a little bit. And then just like, okay, that is the awkward moment over. Let's move on. But I you kind of attract yourself in your relationships. And so some of my friends are still emotionally unavailable. Let's just put it out there. That's the truth. And so whenever I try to have like a real vulnerable authentic conversation, it can still be tricky to navigate. Usually they rise to they'll have a conversation, but it's like it's been a transition. Nothing that's like crazy, but I noticed that pretty quickly because I did become more quote unquote confrontational, which is still, crazy for me because I was always passive aggressive, but I can see where it took a minute to catch up, Thing or
Yeah, when I was executive coaching a lot, that was something that would come up so often with my clients because I think we think two things. Like A, that conflict either we just don't talk about it or it should be like quick, easy, and dirty and just move on. But like conflict communication is its own skill.
yeah.
So always like I would always give my clients this framework of like how to handle a conflict to like really to make the process smoother for both parties, because oftentimes too what happens in conflict is all the other person hears is like, "You're attacking me." Like, "I did something wrong, you hate me, you're mad." And then obviously they're gonna be defensive, right? There's a reason that, that guy, God, who was
Mhm.
it? Wrote that book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like, there's a
Stephen
reason it
Covey.
sold so many conflicts.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it's hard, right? It's its own skill set, and we don't often, like, appreciate that it is difficult to have conflict conversations.
Yeah, it really is. And uh that actually was such a major epiphany for me because that's whenever I realized another area of perfectionism was being sneaky because I 100% did expect that if I told somebody this bothers me, that they never do it again. That they go, "Oh, I
Um
would never want to bother you and never do that thing again." And I'm like, why is that my expectation? And I was like, oh, because that's what I expect of myself. I'm not saying I'm perfect and that I did that, but I would beat the hell out of myself if I made the mistake again. So, like, that's what you need to do too. So, unraveling all of that really made it easier for me to go, okay, they're allowed. I will 100% support human nature popping up here and them being really defensive in response. Even the most enlightened person can have a defensive response to you saying something bothered you because, a lot of us are recovering good girls. And so it's hard to feel like we're in trouble. So I was like, you know what? That's a beautiful lesson. I will allow people to show up imperfectly. So if their initial response is bullshit, that's okay too. As long as there's a period where they're like, my bad, my bad. And I allow that same thing for myself too. Because before it was like, you know better. So you should, blah, 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 blah. Where it's like now, as long as like I give myself that same grace and compassion, if I come back very sincerely and say, "Here's how I'd like to do that better next time. I'm so sorry." Uh, then that's fine. And that's what I can also allow from my friends and other relationships is just be imperfect. That's fine. You don't have to respond to my, communication perfectly. And I probably didn't communicate it perfectly either. So as long as we can have that moment where we're like, okay, so that was a little awky, but here we are.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like our deepest biological need is to be accepted by other people because humans are tribe animals. We're not like solo. We live in a pack. And so when someone does like bring feedback to you, that's a threat. And your brain's going to perceive it as a threat. And you have to have a lot of self-awareness to like breathe and down regulate and then choose to respond. And that's like not everyone's gonna be able to do that, and not everyone's gonna be able to do that always in all
Right.
circumstances. Well, yeah, I
Right.
think having that compassion is huge.
No, I totally agree. Well, I have loved having you today. I would love even to have you on again. But for now, tell us where we can where we can find you, kind of what you're doing and any of that stuff.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I would love to come back and continue this conversation to see where else the conversation might go. Because it's been really interesting to get to unpack some of these things with a fellow, um, dead parent club
Yes,
friend,
yes,
which is
yeah.
especially a younger one, right? Like, a lot of people have lost their parents now, I suppose, as we get older, but it's different, you losing them in childhood. But if anyone's curious about, like, my work with psychedelics, for instance, you can go to shouldimicrodose.net. There,
Oh,
is a very quick quiz that you can take, and they'll very clearly tell you, like, "Yes, this is for you. No, it's not," or, "It's worth having more of a conversation because like, there's some nuance there, and so, for instance, you brought up, like, your brother has schizophrenia. That's a question there. Like, is there, a family history or personal history with schizophrenia, bipolar, psychosis? So, it's as I don't want to take too much time for people. It's about 2 minutes, but for a 2-minute quiz, it is very comprehensive. But you can
yeah.
also find me and connect with me. on Instagram, JuliECyvonne. That's my handle on Instagram. And that name, JulieCyvonne.com, is my website where you can find more about my one-to-one work or a great intro to microdosing program I have, or even coming on a retreat to have that like full, larger guided therapeutic dose. So those are all ways to connect with me. And if you message me on Instagram or something, I really do respond. So if anyone has any questions out there, if you're interested in learning more about psychedelics, I have a podcast, The Inner Trip, 365 Days with
Oh,
Plant Medicine, where I talk about like my psychedelic use and my clients and obviously anonymously. But that's a great place if people are like, I'm really interested in psychedelics to start.
yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay. Well, awesome. I will also make sure to include all of that in the show notes, but I just, want to give you an
Okay.
opportunity to kind of talk about yourself.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to push stop if you'll hang out for 1 sec.
Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share.